Welcome back to the Michael Brooks Show. I am Michael Brooks. Joining us now is Dr. Cornel West. He is a professor of the practice of public philosophy at Harvard University. He's the author of many, many books, including Race Matters, Democracy Matters, and as people have been pointing out to me a lot today, you also have probably seen him in The Matrix, in addition to all of his enormous contributions to activism and moral consciousness in this country and across the globe. Dr. West, thank you so much for doing this.
Brother, I'm the one who's blessed, and I want to salute you, not just for the work you do here on the radio, but your recent text against the web, dealing with some of these right-wing intellectuals, trying to keep them accountable. And you do a marvelous job, and it's just a blessing to be in conversation with you, though, brother. Indeed, indeed.
We met at Harvard a couple of months ago, and
oh yeah,
we're actually going to have on Piper later to talk about some of the work that the Harvard students are doing to try to protect the workers there during this time. And I just wanted to start with the sort of timeline of what some of us thought, maybe naively, a couple of months ago was a real opportunity for an enormous change, at that time represented in the Bernie Sanders momentum. And here we are. I remember flying back from LA at an event I was doing the night of Super Tuesday when Bernie, it didn't go so well. And then I realized that Corona was a real thing. And I remember sitting on the plane going, wow, Bernie's out and we've got a pandemic. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that shift and where we are now and how to fortify ourselves in that context?
Well, I have very precious memories of that dialogue we had there with Brother Phil Agnew and Sister Crystal and Piper. All the students were marvelous. They were magnificent there. The sister who took off with that first speech, wasn't she something?
Something else.
Oh,
incredible.
My God, she was powerful. Her mother was there too. But no, Piper. I think we want to first... that is Sister Piper.
Yeah.
Because I think I knew about her first name. Yeah, but I must say that I think it's important to situate ourselves before we even jump into that particular moment, because the crucial thing is that the Bernie Sanders campaign comes along as an attempt to engage in some kind of revitalizing, regenerating of progressive possibilities in the midst of an American empire in profound decay and deterioration. And so when you got the greed at the top of a predatory capitalist civilization, and then you got the denial of its imperial tentacles, then you got the vicious legacies of white supremacy that sit at the very center of the American imperial project, vis-a-vis indigenous peoples, black peoples, brown, but especially, of course, the weight of slavery, and yellow too. And then you got the vicious kinds of patriarchy at work. And what happens in the last, 12 months is one of the last gaps, one of the last efforts to try to accent the best of the progressive legacy of a decaying empire. And there are those moments where it looked as if, lo and behold, the milquetoast neoliberals tied to Wall Street, tied to the military-industrial complex, with their own forms of captivity to white male supremacy. It looked as if they were in a situation where they could not stop the Bernie campaign. And there was moments of elation. We were fired up, though, brother. And we moved toward Nevada. Oh, even the corporate media had to say, now we must take Bernie seriously. They had been treating him so viciously in such an ugly way. And this is true for MSNBC especially, but voices on CNN as well. Of course, Fox News, you just take for granted the mean-spiritedness and the unfairness vis-a-vis Brother Bernie, calling him a communist and a Bolshevik and so forth and so on. But that was a moment in which especially young brothers and sisters, because as you know, if the only folk who could vote in America were under 40, Bernie would have been in the White House five years ago. And he would win again.
Yes.
But my generation comes in with all of our cowardliness and all of our myopia, short-sightedness, and selfishness, and what have you. That serves as a kind of incubus around. I mean, just like a weight around the neck of the empire that doesn't allow the best of the empire to come forward. And so, where are we now? We're in one of the most grim and dim and bleak moments in the history of the empire, in the history of the nation, the history of the country. And the democratic experiment that's always been trying to come to fuller birth against the backdrop of the imperial corruption, the backdrop of the capitalist greed, the backdrop of the vicious white supremacy, the ugly male supremacy, and so forth. It's very hard now to discern real possibilities, real potentialities that can be actualized at this moment. So we just got to fight. We just fight against the grain. You know, it's going to be blues like all the way down. You know what I mean?
What is
Been
the
down so long, the
relationship?
down don't worry me no more. Therefore, I got to keep on fighting because it just looks bleak. It really is.
It does look bleak, and it feels bleak.
Absolutely. And it is bleak. It is
It
bleak.
is. What is the relationship between I guess I want to ask you, is there a liberation in that realism, though? Because I've been trying to push the idea, and maybe this is me just doing some spin, I don't know, but that if you can be really honest about where we are, and that includes that you have this grotesque president and everything that he represents, it also includes that you have a Democratic Party that consolidates more effectively to stop Bernie Sanders' basic decency agenda than anything else they've consolidated around in decades. And that's
right.
Yeah. So that this is that, and all of the accelerating crises we're in, that this is really, really bleak. And we don't have to sanitize it. We don't have to say, oh, well, I don't know, maybe Biden will turn out to be great, or maybe, maybe some this or that will happen. That if we sit in that real discomfort and we really are real, that in a way that opens up some space for us to see a bigger horizon. And maybe on the other hand, there are these countervailing forces. There are Amazon workers going on strike. There are a whole new sets of people tragically getting exposed to conditions that they haven't been exposed to before. And maybe that awakens something else.
The favorite word of the great Samuel Beckett, the great poet and playwright, was perhaps. And I like that. That because perhaps what you're saying is indeed true. So that I would never want to put any kind of negative closure and say that it's all bleak and it's all grim. That sometimes a certain kind of realism has been said that romanticism is a realism is a romanticism on all fours. So that you got your feet on the ground, all of them on the ground. The animals got all theirs on the ground, connected to the suffering, connected to the misery, connected to the despair, connected to the despondency. And yet you can still feel the rumblings with those feet on the ground of some folk trying to break through. The calls for general strike, May 1, the calls for the various kinds of resistances across the board. Some of them are socialists, some of them are liberals, some of them are communists. There's a whole vast array of people who are fighting the fascism of the Trump administration. And we need that kind of anti-fascist coalition. This is what makes it difficult. You have a coalition with folks, you have deep disagreements, but one thing you agree on, you must push back not just Trump in the White House, but the forces behind him. Because if it were just a matter of a gangster in the White House, you just be able to push the gangster out, and lo and behold, we got some democratic awakening taking place. No, it's not that at all. There's a lot of forces behind Trump. Some of the forces behind Trump are outright right wing. Some of the forces do have certain neoliberal connections. We know there were certain neoliberals in the Democratic Party who preferred Trump over my dear brother Bernie Sanders. And that's precisely the reason that we had to be very honest and candid about the truth telling. What does it mean to have a neo-fascist right wing tied to Wall Street, tied to the military-industrial complex with its captivity to white male supremacy and so forth, and then have a neoliberal wing of that same ruling class, which is the Democratic establishment,
right,
or the establishment in the Democratic Party, you see. And they still have very deep connections, even though they are different. I would never say that they are equivalent. You know, people oftentimes like to characterize left-wing folk, like myself and others, saying, where do you stand? There's no difference. Nobody said there's a difference between a neo-fascist catastrophe and a neoliberal disaster. There is a difference.
There's a big the Medellin cartel and the Cali cartel operated very differently. They're both still cartels.
Operate very differently. And when it comes to, you know, certain kind of concerns of rights and liberties, when it comes to certain kind of concessions to working people and poor people, those concessions are important, and that's what our neoliberals like to harp on. But those same neoliberals are willing to unfairly, oftentimes, marginalize and outright trash or lie on even a soft leftist like Bernie Sanders. Because we know Bernie Sanders was not running on the Democratic Socialist platform at all. He was running on a progressive neo-populist platform. He was running on an FDR-like robust progressive liberal, old-style liberal platform. And he still was pushed to the side in the name of a neoliberal unity. And you saw them all come together with Biden, the Clintons, Sister Amy, and Brother Pete. And, of course, Obama is the political pope in the background who supposedly is untouchable for those in the Democratic Party. But those of us who want to tell the truth know that he remains the godfather of contemporary neoliberalism in the American empire. But to have a black person as that godfather makes it almost impossible for neoliberals to talk honestly about the connection between white supremacy and predatory capitalism. That's why I'm so glad you have my dear brother Adolph Reed on. He is the greatest political theorist that we have, who understands the relation between race, predatory capitalism, and empire, and he writes about it. And of course, he's had to cut so radically against the grain because it is a powerful indictment of the black political class, the black professional class, and the worst of the black bourgeoisie. And that black bourgeoisie is now leading not just black people, not just America, but the empire, are helping lead it off a cliff. Because even when we push Trump out, and we must push Trump out, I do believe in an anti-fascist coalition, but I don't believe in any way holding my tongue when it comes to the neoliberal captivity to capital, the captivity to empire, and the captivity to white supremacist forms that supposedly are anti-racist, but it becomes just diversity within the class hierarchy, diversity within the imperial hierarchy. We've got to be able to tell those truths in the name of W.B. Du Bois and Victoria Garvin and Ella Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer and the later Martin Luther King Jr. We ain't got to Malcolm X yet.
I want to get to those voices actually in a minute.
They didn't die for nothing, my brothers. They didn't die for nothing.
I want to get to those.
You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.